SolarWinds and beyond, validate that your controls aren't vulnerable to a supply chain attack. My name is Zach Baer. I'll be hosting this webinar today. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it directly over to our CTO and co-founder, Itzik Kotler, so that we can dive right in to the meat of this webinar. Itzik, over to you.
Thank you, Zach. Hi, everybody. My name is Itzik Kotler, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of SafeBreach. And today we're having with me Tomer Bar, who's managing the SafeBreach Labs in Israel. And as we mentioned, we're going to dive deep into the SolarWinds campaign, what happened, what could happen, and of course, some action items for you to take from this practically to your day-to-day. Tomer, to you.
Thank you. So the threat actor is an unclassified threat actor, but the main assumption is that it's being started from a known threat actor. It's called APT29, which usually targets governments and technologies companies. This attack campaign began at spring this year, 2020. And the main attack vector, we'll speak about the secondary attack vector later, was a supply chain attack. So what actually is a supply chain attack? It's an attack, it's an indirect attack where the threat actor doesn't directly attack the victim's network. It uses a proxy. This time it was SolarWinds, and we see a lot of increase in supply chain attacks. It allows the attacker to attack all the customers or user of this supply chain attack, and it's hard to and difficult to identify. So the first step was to install the SolarWinds certificate, and then to gain access to the website where SolarWinds placed its update packages and replacing the legit package with a Trojanized package, and then sign it with the stolen certificate. So it will seems like a legitimate package, untouched one, and then just wait, and the victims will automatically download and execute the software update that includes this Trojanized DLL that is called SUNBURST, which is very sophisticated malware. It's very cautious, and the threat actor has a lot of patience. So we can see a code snippet here. The first one, marked with 1, is when the malware verifies that is the current process name. So it's the malware process name was not changed. It just compared it to a predefined hash. So it's the name of the process. And if a researcher or other administrator suspect this file, change the name, copy it to a clean machine, and try to analyze it, it will just act in a benign way without doing any malicious activity, and maybe it will avoid detection. The second thing that is interesting here is that in line 4, you can see that it compared the current date, it's now, to the infection time, and it waited between 12 to 14 days in a random way before it will do any malicious activity. So it will be hard to correlate the infection to the malicious activity. We made an analysis of the malware blacklist of softwares that it verifies that they are not existing in the infected machine before doing the malicious action. So we'll see a lot of categories of analysis and network analysis, PE analysis, malware analysis, antiviruses, SIEM solution. There's a very big list, extended list of products that were probably tested against the SUNBURST malware by the threat actor before they're actually attacking victims, and then they made a list, and if one of these products are existing in the endpoint, they won't do the malicious activity. So we can see also a lot of disassemblers, PE tools, debuggers, and actually a lot of analysis tools. We can see .NET decompiler here because the tool is written in .NET, but we can also see Java, Python, and Flash, and we haven't seen components of this malware using Java or Python or Flash. So there are two possibilities here. One is that there are some other components that are written in different languages and that have not been revealed yet. But and the second alternative option is that they just want to see if this is a researcher machine or someone that understands how to analyze and decompile malwares. And if it's a machine of an admin, they won't risk their malware, so it won't be detected. And lastly, also traffic tools, application isolation, rootkit, shellcodes, and so on. And when they actually do the malicious activity after a 2 weeks period, and after that they verify that probably the user of the computer is not a research analyst or someone with a technology with the knowledge, the technical knowledge how to detect this tool. It's also Masquerade is traffic as the original or benign protocol used by SolarWinds software. The original purpose was to collect and evaluate data from the environment and from the machine to make the customer experience to be good. So they just use the same protocol and just embed their collected data and exfiltrated data from the machine inside this protocol, so it will seem very benign and no one will suspect it. But in the last 2 days, it was published another secondary attack vector. The assumption is that it was an attack vector that was used before the main supply chain attack. And there is a second assumption that the threat actor had some access to the mailbox of the people that runs the security examination and analysis in the victim's environment, and they managed to bypass two-factor authentication for Outlook web access, and that was the secondary initial the initial access. So what are they doing after they got initial access, whether it's by SolarWinds or Outlook web access? They read encoded payload from a fake image file. The image file has the header of a benign image file, but inside it there is a encoded payload, and they loaded it to memory. And from that point, it's only a fileless malware, only in memory, doesn't touch the disk in an encrypted way. So it's more difficult to detect it. And then it deploys CobbleStrike Beacon. CobbleStrike is a commercial company, and Beacon is one of the tools CobbleStrike provided to communicate with the command and control infrastructure. So in the command and control infrastructure, they also made some adjustment, so it will seems like legit infrastructure, and that the traffic to the C2 infrastructure will seem like legit traffic. The one interesting thing is that it started back into December 2019, but the C2 infrastructure was acquired, but only at the end of February this year, they established the hosting and the name server. So the attack in this vector probably hasn't started before February 2020. They also matched the legitimate host found in the victim's environment to the city server names. So it will be a familiar name to the victim, and also only used IP addresses originating from the same country as the victim using VPNs. So no weird IPs from unused countries were seen in those traffics and logs. After they executed the memory-only dropper, they started to collect infrastructure and environment data and also credentials. They never used the same credentials from the initial access phase in the lateral movement. They just collected new credentials, and it seems like a legit users logins and nothing special, and also used and exploited the SAML tokens, which is an SSO standard, and they use those tokens to authenticate to other servers in the network. So CISA determined that this threat is a risk for almost all federal government, state, local, tribal, territorial organization, and also the private sectors. And I think the first questions that everybody will ask is, how can I check if I was breached or not? So the first thing is to use the published YARA rules. YARA rules is just a format of running binary signatures. So there were YARA rules for SUNBURST and also for the fileless teardrop and other components. So you can run it in your environment and see if there is a match. It means that you are possibly infected with a component of this campaign. Also searching for the traffic, the IP addresses and the malicious domain used in the C2 server in logs and network devices and security devices and softwares. And that's pretty much what you can do in that point. But the industry and also researchers are also investigating it, of course, the government. So Microsoft Azure hosted together with GoDaddy the C2 server, so they have logs which IPs connected to this C2 server, and Microsoft already published that at least 40 of our customers were infected. And the second thing is that the C2 server domain name was constructed via a fixed avs.mcloud.com. And the red part is an example of obfuscated domain name of the victim. So security researcher managed to deobfuscate the algorithm and get the list of all the active domain names of victims. So that is the second alternative to detect a lot of victims.
Thank you, Tomer. So as a response to this campaign, the SafeBreach Lab led by Tomer has kicked into motion. And as a result of this, we have developed new breach methods, new attack that could help you validate your security posture with respect to these threats. So as you can see, following the classical kill chain methodology, we added new simulation with respect to the infiltration techniques. Those will test the capabilities of taking the malware that Tomer was just going over and parts of its implant, testing the capabilities of taking those over email, over web, and other means, and then going into the actual assets, actual host level techniques, testing the capabilities of having the malware and some of its implants being written into the machine. And then last but not least, the lateral movement, the capabilities of the adversaries to move, again, bringing their tools with them from computer to computer. The already existing breach methods in our hacker playbook, again, goes back into the idea that adversaries are recycling techniques, and essentially there is so many techniques that could be used giving standard TCP/IP and computation. And so we already had offering for our existing customers that they could have tested themselves and get a partial security assessment to understand how safe it is. So with respect to what we already have in our hacker playbook today, before Tomer and the team kicked in and added the new content, we're looking at, again, additional host level techniques. As Tomer explained, the malware behavior and the different behaviors that associate with this. We already had some of those already in the product. And with respect to the exfiltration technique that the adversary were using to take information from the computers and the networks, we already cover that also. So today, SafeBreach customers can already enjoy a report that will basically run all the relevant simulation, both new one as well as existing one. It will then present it in a way that will help understand which part of the kill chain, which part of the actions the company has the most security and the least amount of security based on the different security control that has been deployed. And then it will go down to break down for each one of those pillars, in this case, network infiltration, propagation within the network, and action on the host, the different distribution across the assets. Of course, this report also generates the bottom line report of the risk as it measures across all the different computers and networks that have SafeBreach installed in them. This is already existing within our product today for our customers. While everybody, of course, is very much heads down with respect to the SolarWinds attack, it is important to mention that this week also there were a couple of other attack campaigns that were publicly noticed that Tomer and the team has responded into. And you can see here two examples of those campaigns that are at the top of the mind of our research team as well as our customers. Again, these reports that include simulation and a breakdown of the threat is also available in the product for our customers. And of course, we would like to extend all the prospects that have joined the webinar today and offer them a limited time offer of a free assessment. The free assessment includes a free report, such as the one that you've seen previously, that will give you an understanding of how safe are you, your company, your computers against the SolarWinds attack campaign. Again, breaking it down from the kill chain methodology, showing you all the different steps. And so you will receive instructions on how to use this offer at the end of the webinar. Zach, back to you.
Great, thank you, Itzik. So we do have some questions, and everybody please feel free to continue to put questions in the question box for Tomer and Itzik to address and answer for you. So Itzik, first question here. How common are supply chain attacks out in the wild and in the environment today?
Great question.
Okay,
Tomer, I'll let you answer first.
Thank you. So actually, we can see an increase in 2020, a large increase in supply chain attacks. I think that the reason for that is that it's more difficult to detect those kind of attack. It's like behind the radar. Under the radar, sorry, and also when you, if the threat actor would like to gain access to a lot of customers that using the same tool, the same software, then in a single point of failure in this supply chain, they can just get access to all of the customers of this product. So it's instead of just going one by one and attack the victims, they just can get a single point of failure.
Great answer, Tomer. And to that, I will add that, again, as the complexity of companies' environment grows and there is more and more dependencies on third-party software and sometimes even third-party services, as Tomer mentioned, the appealing of hacking either a service provider or a company that provides software to so many other companies is becoming more and more appealing. And then the effort to converge on this target, whether it's to develop a zero-day to hack them or by any means necessary try to hack them in order to hack their customers, is just becoming a very, very frequent and desired target.
Great, thank you, Itzik and Tomer. And this kind of plays into another question we have here of, could this attack happen to other software vendors in the space? And more broadly, right, how can we ensure that none of their other vendors are exposed to these types of attacks?
Yes, thank you. Good question. So, of course, this is just an example, and we saw just in December a few more examples of supply chain attacks, even on governments around the world. So it's not a single event, and we should be prepared for this attack vector.
Awesome, thanks. We have another question here that just came in. Tomer, will SafeBreach or Itzik, will SafeBreach build playbooks to simulate the exact C2 communication or DGA method of SUNBURST?
So yeah, thank you. We already implemented those simulations, but it's not just it. We also have a lot of simulations that Itzik mentioned before that mimic the malicious behavior, not the exact indication of compromise, and that's allow you to test your security controls and verify that they are working against other threats and not just on the specific one.
I'll add to that while it's very important to be specific with the IOCs and the TTPs with respect to this existing threat, as Tomer mentioned, the bigger play here is obviously tapping into the behavioral, which then again, we have to remember that the adversary that has control to their malware software can change the mechanism, can have a software update that will switch to a different DGA and a different domain. We should look at the broader picture here and then help simulate the behavioral in conjunction with the actual IOCs, but not in replacement of.
Great, thank you both for the input on that. We had a couple more come in here. First one here is there a checklist that people should go through to ensure that a network is not compromised by SolarWinds?
Yeah, there is a checklist, and actually, if you are a customer of SafeBreach, you can just have a one click and do the checklist automatically for you. But there are some PowerShell checklists that you can combine together, published this week on the internet as well.
And I'll add to that, yes, definitely, as I presented previously in our reporting capability, we have, as Tomer mentioned, a one-click button to run the relevant simulation, and then the report itself will be a checklist to go through all the things that were successful or not. I will say that, again, it's always a challenge understanding when an adversary is gain access to the network to understand from an incident response perspective whether the adversaries no longer have access to the network, whether it's really gone. And so again, this is where we are offering the proactive approach of simulating the different behavioral, malicious behavioral and IOCs to ensure that, again, whether the adversary will try to adapt to the environment, whether the adversary has a secondary plan. Once you know how good you are with respect to those behaviors, once you blocked and detected those, then you can have the guarantee that your network is no longer compromised.
Great, thank you for that, Itzik and Tomer. And then we had another one here of, do you have any information about how the SolarWinds initial compromise was executed or how the certificate was stolen?
No, actually, we don't have any information regarding the way that the certificate was stolen, but it will take a lot of efforts to get to it, because usually those assets are very secured and in some organization air-gapped, networked, and so it's a very sophisticated attack. We can say that for sure.
Agree.
Great, thank you guys. And then a question here about other APTs. Do you see other APTs that have the resources to launch an attack at this scale?
Yeah, the Russian threat actor are not the only one active in the cyber warfare. So we also see other threat actors. You can guess the countries that can and did that in that scale of attack. But of course, there are other cyber crimes and other ransom attacks that usually don't go to this scale, but can do harm as well. So we should be prepared for the commodity malwares as well as to these top-notch campaigns.
And I'll add to that as Tomer mentioned, again, allegedly Russia that is behind this attack is not the only country that is capable of launching, again, allegedly this kind of an APT campaign. And we invite the listeners of this webinar to look through past APTs. There's already a few campaigns in the past where a digital certificate was either stolen or compromised or misused or abused to assign different artifacts. So again, this is definitely not the first time that we're witnessing this TTP.
Great, thank you both for all the insight to these questions. We have gotten through all the questions, so we appreciate everybody joining us for this webinar on SolarWinds. So after the webinar, as Itzik mentioned at the end, we will be sending out an email with both the recording to this webinar as well as how you could take advantage of the free assessment offer. So that will be coming out here shortly. And then also, if you have any questions that were not answered or that come up in the coming days regarding this, please feel free to reach out to our team and we will be happy to get those answered for you as soon as we can. So thank you, Tomer and Itzik, and thank you everybody for joining our webinar today.
Thank you, Zach.